So I think most everybody was here yesterday for my presentation, but for anyone who's online who's not, I'm Stephen Woods. I work with the Center for Post-Carbon Logistics, Schooner Apollonia, a number of other groups who are trying to actively implement sustainable propulsion and sustainable trade under sail and electric power in the Northeast United States. My background is not in the maritime field. I kind of stumbled into this through the course of my master's thesis. I spent 20 years working in museums. I spent about 6 in Uncle Sam's Area Flyboys. And then I got my master's in sustainable and resilient communities. So I'm coming at this from a bit of a different angle from most of your professional mariners. But we're looking at coastal trade. We're looking at replacing trucks, trains, and other significantly less efficient methods of transport along the coastal corridor and inland. And we'll talk about the limits of that plan here in a second. But we're looking to get this going like right now, very soon. When I say the Northeast, what I really mean is New England, New York, and New Jersey. So this is the area we're looking at in particular. There's a couple of marine highways in here. You have the New York State Canal System, which includes the Finger Lakes, the Oswego Canal, the Lake Champlain Canal, Lake Champlain, that's in 90 and 87, the Long Island Sound, so that's right there. And all the way around up through the border with Nova Scotia. So we are, limiting this to a degree, but this is the region we're looking at. We're not talking at the moment about Great Lakes. Those need their own plans. They have different licensing requirements for captains and operators and such. So that's going to be its own set of plans. I do have to put limits on this somewhere, or it's going to be a presentation that long and nobody wants to sit through that. So again, limits, Great Lakes exclusive. And we're only covering packet routes. Now, we're doing the packet routes is scheduled service. And this is going to be things like the Apollonia, which has a fixed schedule. They sail on that schedule, and quite a lot of cargo at this point. October was the ship was literally packed. It's hard to move around. It was great. We're leaving tramping out for specific reasons we'll get to in a few moments. And in the paper version of this, we're talking about more ports, but we're sticking to the major ones here, so it doesn't drag on forever. But this plan is, we have groups of people who are actively trying to implement this. So if you're interested in it, please do talk to me afterward. Now for tramping, it does have a role to play in this, but I'm not going to include it as a formal part of the plan for a good reason. It's good for scouting and expansion. Before you really install a packet on a route, you're going to want to have a couple of boats go in there, do a couple of runs, show the flag, get people familiar with the idea and enthused, but that's kind of its limit there. You can get wider participation because you can get other ships involved. That's great. That's fantastic. More cargo owners. You need to fill gaps. If, for example, Schooner Apollonia is absolutely full and you move like 1 more ton of cargo on a run, that's when you get a small tramp vessel involved. But if you look at what happened historically, which is where the museum skills come in handy, packet sail traders stayed on for another 20 years after all tramps were gone. Those scheduled services were much more successful held on longer. During the last oil crisis, there were several attempts to make sailing cargo packets, and they worked. Usually for, up to about 1985 when the price of oil dropped through the floor and trucking was cheap again. Now, the tramping expeditions usually fail within a year. So it's good to know that and not repeat obvious mistakes in the past. So there will be tramping. There will be these other spot market type shipping, but it's not going to be a major part of this plan. As for the packet routes, I have 10 outlines. These are based on some sailing qualities and some just general geography of the area. You don't necessarily need 10 vessels to run these, however. One of these is already running. Hudson River Sail packet is running right now. That's Apollonia. Hudson River Electric would basically pick up where Apollonia leaves off. So that's going north of Hudson on the Hudson River. And that's because you get into a really narrow channel with 200-foot cliffs on either side and hills and such, and there's no wind. The predominant winds are east and west. They go right over the river, and it's terribly bad sailing. So an electric boat would be far preferable. This would probably be something like Polaris, which is at the Hudson River Maritime Museum. The only U.S. Coast Guard inspected 100% solar powered passenger vessel, it's a version designed for cargo. The Erie Canal, of course, goes from Waterford, New York, out to Buffalo. That's included as well. That could probably use the same boat early on as the Hudson River Electric service, but eventually there will hopefully be enough business that it will be two different boats. Oswego and the Finger Lakes, that would go from Oswego, New York through Syracuse down to the Finger Lakes. That can use one boat as well. Probably again a solar vessel because of the height restrictions in the canal. Narragansett Bay, Long Island, and New Jersey, those packets can easily use the same boat. It's just a matter of schedule. Gulf of Maine is going to need its own. Lake Champlain is going to need its own. But those can be dealt with as those opportunities arise. Now, this is not set in stone. This hasn't been passed by an act of Congress or anything. There's no authority behind it. This is just a suggested pattern of expansion. This is what we are looking to do. When you see a date in here, it is the latest that this makes sense to do. Like we should have it running by then. If we can do it earlier, don't sit around waiting for no reason. So if any of this happens earlier, we would be very, very happy. You can see the diagrams. Sail ports are in blue. Electric ports are in green. Junctions are yellow. The distinction between sail and electric ports is from Colson's thesis in 1980. He did a whole thesis on the reintroduction of sail and its effect on ports. He distinguished between steam and sail ports and why certain ports weren't used during their sail but were when steam came. So any sail port is also an electric port, but the opposite does not necessarily work. So that distinction is actually important thing there. There's more data on each of these ports given in the appendices to the paper, and the goal is to mutually support. Competition in the early stages of this is a bad idea. You want to be cooperating. Now, there is no slide for 2024. So if you're wondering where that went, it was never made. 2024 is all about consolidating what Apollonia is already doing. That's going to go from Hudson down to New York Harbor, also reaching other places around New York Harbor, both Harbor and New Jersey. There's been some lake on tramping runs into Long Island and a few other places, but that is the critical thing in 24. Solidify that, make sure that Apollonia is full on absolutely every run, and do some exploratory tramping into the canal systems, maybe up to Lake Champlain. But we're not establishing a packet next year. So we'll be doing exploration by 25. It is about time that we have packet service into the Erie Canal. Why? The Erie Canal opened in 1825. So it's an nice even 200 years. People like those nice round numbers. There are a whole bunch of plans to do active programming with a whole bunch of museums, with a whole bunch of other major agencies, and everybody on the canal corridor is going to be breaking things out. If you're 200, you might as well take advantage of that. Now, I'm not planning to go too far. Schenectady is not that far down the canal. If we can go further, that would be fantastic, but I'm not getting my hopes up too much. But we'll hopefully be doing expansion and work out as far as Rochester, if all goes well. By 2026, we should have a bit more expansion. We should be out to Utica at least. There's a bunch of cargo to be picked up there. It's a nice, easy step. But there's a couple of events that make us want to focus elsewhere. We want to make sure we're getting up to Whitehall, base Lake Champlain, and start doing tramping in Lake Champlain because of another nice round number anniversary coming up, 250th of the American Revolution. Battle of Balfour Island occurred on Lake Champlain. This is a great chance to get, for example, the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum to build another ship. You know, a nice replica ship of one of the ones that was moving freight on the lake before the war. It's designed for freight, was then pressed into service. You have a museum build it for a sail freight company, you put in the contract and it's going to be at all these historical events for the commemoration. But it's only operated by the sail freight company. The museum provides a museum program there. Now everybody got what they wanted. There's a replica ship out there from the 250th events. The Lake Champlain Maritime Museum has a whole program of building this ship. And we have a discount sail freighter launching on Champlain. Fantastic, everybody wins. I don't have Burlington on the map right there because the battle wasn't until October, and having worked in museums, I expect everyone to wait until like May of 26 to start this, and they'll kick it off with Cliffways just in time to sail up to Balfour Island for the anniversary of the battle and float right back out of the water at the end of the season. So that's my assumption that we should be doing something up there. The other thing to focus on is Long Island. Long Island campaign of 1776. had a huge amount of amphibious operations. There's already talk about a whole lot of politics being involved all along this area in those commemorations. There's no reason not to use that to get a working vessel or some level of actual working sail in among them. So that's the reason for the focus is there. 27 is a really big expansion. Hopefully we'll have a historically modeled sail freighter going in Lake Champlain. We'll be all the way out, opening up the Oswego and Finger Lakes packet and packet service out to Syracuse. And 77 had a whole bunch of activities around Narragansett Bay in the Revolutionary War, so we should be expanding that way in addition. The burning of Kingston 250th could be September something of 2027, and then again, there's already plans to have, I think, a dozen hull ships in Kingston for that event. Again, no reason not to have as much working sail there as we possibly can. It's going to get a lot of attention from people who are not normally paying attention to this type of thing, and that is how we help expand and celebrate. Plus, we're looking to get as big a fleet as possible, so a couple extra sticks on the water isn't going to be complained about by the certificate associations. 2028, we should finish basically everything out to Buffalo. This almost the whole network. We're also getting into New Jersey, and you'll notice there's only one thing missing by 28. That's the Gulf of Maine. At this point, 28, 29, we should be consolidating all this stuff. And what we've basically established at this point is what was outlined in a grant-written program from NYSERDA by Jeff Utmark in 2015 called ERIMAX. It's a business plan and vessel design for the ERIMAX RSSA to be moving cargo from Buffalo and the Finger Lakes to the far end of Long Island and back. Carrying wine both ways, a lot of high-value cargoes. There's a huge amount of stuff growing in this area that's consumed right down here, vice versa. So establish those trade routes, solidify that, make sure everything is making money on this. The idea is well accepted. And then by 2030, install the Gulf of Maine as a regular packet. So this is what the network looks like as a whole, without all that, inconvenient geography. So that is what we're looking to establish in 7 years. That's not a lot of time. 7 years for probably at least 5 boats, preferably open source sail freighters, if anybody's currently setting those up. That would be fantastic, and is what we're looking to do right now. We're going to need a lot of infrastructure. I talked about these yesterday, but hopefully these will be deployable almost everywhere we go. These will be kind of temporary, but it takes a long time to build the other necessary infrastructure, the permanent stuff that we will need. It was torn out over the last 100 years. So hopefully we'll be deploying a bunch of these. There's talk of trying to deploy at least one next year with Apollonia. We'll see how far that gets. It's positioning of them and getting clearances to put them places can be a bit interesting. That's a diplomatic adjective. This is not set in stone. This is a suggestion. And if, for example, something changes, we should change the plan. Yes, that is the end network we are looking for in 2030, but it's not actually critical exactly how we get there. There is the main sail freight project. They did one run in 2015, and they did another run that was extremely poorly publicized in 2021. That's all they've ever done. But all the people who are interested in that are in the Gulf of Maine, and they're still around. So if we start expanding everything else and they decide we're starting up a packet and going from Portland to Boston, we should probably lay off on the expansion west on the Erie Canal and make sure we can link to that. What we really want to establish is a contiguous train that things can be handed off through, if necessary, to get the longest possible length of transit. For a lot of this, small vessels are going to be fine. A lot of this is short distances. Around Narragansett Bay, Newport, Providence, the farming areas around, you don't really need a big boat. It's a day sail to get anywhere. So if you load 2 tons into a 30-foot recreational boat and then sail it across from like Little Compton to Newport, that's a couple of hours. And if you have the crew on for 2 weeks, you can still move a lot of stuff in that time. And that boat from the back of a marina where it's been kind of left alone and nobody's paid the storage fees on it for a while, then it won't cost much to get hold. Once you establish with those small vessels that there's a lot of business here and you need a bigger ship, I speak from experience in saying it's going to be a whole lot easier to get investors for a larger vessel once you can prove this business already exists. There are additional concerns with this, though. If you get into larger ships, we need labor. We'll be talking about this later, but I talked about it yesterday. We're gonna need a lot more sailors who are willing and able to do this. We need to make sure there are training spots on each of the vessels that we have in action. And if we're gonna have people doing this regularly, you have to be paying people enough to live. The only way we're gonna be able to make the money to do that is by getting enough cargo to pay the bills. There's a bunch of other things we can do as well that are talked about in things like the Sail-Trade Handbook, with things that Apollonia has done to raise other funds. Those things can be done as well. But if we really want to actually change how transportation is handled in North America, what we really want is cargo volumes paying all of the bills and more. Now, this room is mostly full of professional mariners, myself accepted. But we don't want to make this a narrow invitation. That would be a bad idea. We don't want to kick out the amateurs. You know what? The amateurs are the only people who have done this so far. Vermont Sail Freight Project, bunch of farmers. Good solid New England tradition. Well, I don't want to pay for transport, so I'm just going to build my own boat and do this. Great. It worked for 2 years. And then it turns out the farmers don't have money or spare time, and that's what you needed to run that project. Farmer ships are a long thing. Community supported shipping. Get a small community together to fund a boat for themselves and move that. When it's a small boat and moving small volumes, that's going to prove the case for everything, and that can be an aggregation to a larger port. And then, of course, if somebody's making a leisure sail already, for example, from Newport to New York City, and you wanted to move a small item anyways, there's no reason not to send that with them, provided their ship is made in the US and it's under 40 feet and fairly. A couple other minor paperwork considered, but you can square those away pretty easily. Again, short range vessels should be explored, and then we got to make sure people know how to do this. Right? If we're going to invite amateurs to this, we should not be doing so in a way that possibly puts them in danger. That is the whole reasoning behind things like the Sail Freight Handbook. This is a publication of the Center for Postcard and Logistics. It is designed to take as many of the lessons from Schooner Apollonia, Vermont Sail Freight Project, and other endeavors of this nature, and make them as accessible as possible to anyone who wants to do this. These open source publications and Creative Commons publications are going to be key to making sure this happens, and people don't have to start from zero reinventing the wheel, or the sailboat, as it were. This is a proposed insignia for farmership, the community supported agriculture, community supported shipping. Relatively self-explanatory, for plow on green, I'll let you sort that, which side of this that is. And then a schooner on blue. This screen it is, and it's a little bit, it's actually like the proper blue on the screen. It's mildly annoying. Like I spent a lot of time choosing the colors, they would actually show up a distance and all. Now it's not gonna move. Anyways, one of the things that is worth doing, flags, insignia, things of that nature show a unity of purpose and that you are all cooperating. So some level of insignia that will go across this entire effort is worth looking at, because then people are going to go on vacation to Boston and see something go by with that flag carrying cargo. Then they're going to be on vacation at Niagara Falls and they're going to see the exact same thing, but it's a different boat. That's going to start more of the questions. It's going to start more of the debate, and possibly people realizing, wait, I could send something all the way through this. Now, whether that'll help enough or not, I don't know, but it's worth trying. If you're interested in any of these things, please do talk to me afterward. Get hold of Schooner Apollonia, preferably Brad Vogel. He's the supercargo, so he's the one really managing the cargo side. So if you know any cargo owners, if you just like to go sailing and happen to be regularly sailing any of these routes, or know anyone who is, anything of that nature, please do let me know. I'll be over there in the corner. If you have any questions, now's a good time.